it really is a concerto for the people. It is meant to be for the people. I think Shostakovich, he wrote it at the end of the war, after the war, and it hadn't seen daylight in, I don't know, almost 10 years. And I'm actually really curious if he changed things while it was sitting in the drawer. But it is just so, I just see so many different types of people in this concerto, and he's really, it's a work that he dedicated to his people. You can feel the love for his country, for his people, and the devastation of what had happened is still happening. And it speaks for their resilience, for their strength, for the enormous pain. And I didn't think that the first movement would move me so much, because the Passacaglia movement, that's all what we, but the first movement, the Nocturne, what strikes me so much about his slow movements, I mean the first and the third, is that the first movement is in a moderate tempo, but every note is somehow represents something. It has a meaning, it has a word, I think. And it's also kind of like an introspection. It's like a confession of, I think, at least 4 or 5 people. And that whole movement sets the mood for the whole concerto. And I remember you saying that that you feel that somehow time stood still in the Passacaglia movement, but it's not a very slow tempo. No, both of the movements, it's moderate, it's andante, and I think that makes it even more. There is depth in it because it has this flowy movement, but it has so much meaning inside.
The gold comes out of his pen. It's it's interesting what you said earlier about it's difficult to describe a piece that you're close to. It's a similar thing with people that you love as well. And I've always found that with pieces that I really adore. You sort of, if someone asks you, oh yeah, tell me about your partner, it's like, well, where do I start, And as you've mentioned, this is a piece for people and for the people, capital T. I think for me, what always strikes me with Shostakovich is how at any given moment on the page, there's really not much going on, actually. There's always just a few things going on. It's maybe not like Zemlinsky, where every instrument has an independent line, oftentimes. But in Shostakovich, the beginning, it's some cellos, some basses, and a lone violin. And that's it. And it sort of makes each note more valuable, more expensive, if you will. And also, at least what I'm thinking during the piece is that's the last time that note is going to be heard. And he makes that so relevant in so much of his music, where every single note is really felt like the last one you're going to hear. I know with this piece, with having the immense depth that it has an amazing amount of irony and humor and joy as well. There really is quite a lot of joy. And I have to say, one of the most joyful moments for me in this piece is listening to you play the cadenza, actually, which, as we both know, our first performance together with BBC National Orchestra of Wales was my first performance of this piece. And this cadenza is just huge. It's absolutely massive. And I had, of course, never stood next to a soloist playing that cadenza. And, I've listened to it in recordings and I've seen performances of it, but I've never been next to a soloist, having just completed 20 minutes of music already, if not more, then do some of the most Olympic violin playing you can possibly imagine, it does fill me with a lot of joy. It may fill you with a lot of pain or adrenaline, but for myself, it's one of those few moments where a cadenza makes the orchestra want to give everything immediately after. It's not like in the Tchaikovsky concerto where you play this absolutely incredible, again, Olympic cadenza, and then it fades into nothing and a lone flute comes out. In this, one of the most incredible dances comes after this that has a lot of irony and grotesque nature to it as well, too.
How I interpret the cadenza is, it's...
I've been meaning to ask you, actually.
So it's very hard to describe in words, but I will try. Is exactly what you meant, that at the end of the cadenza, so I don't think the cadenza is the climax. That's the thing. I think the insanity in the fourth movement, this absolute joyful dance, which is not joyful at all. I think it's a very forced triumph, kind of a fake triumph that Shostakovich is, there's also a lot of irony and sarcasm in it, and it's quite dark, and it's almost like, but the cadenza has to build up to that, I think. And so I try to build all that frustration and what anger and pain into the dun-dun, So
the scariest moment.
That's my duty, to make the orchestra want to come, with that first tutti of the fourth movement, and then it to just spiral into, the minute we know the concerto has ended. And so for me, it's just the cadenza is very, very heavy, and there's a lot of, but it's never to the maximum.
It also takes its time.
Yes.
That's an interesting thing.
It's like a wheel going. But, apart from all this, the most important, and not important, but what I find so unique about this concerto is that there are droplets of hope. And, I've been doing Britain concerto very intensively in the last couple of years. And I know they admired each other. And there is kind of a link, in my personal opinion. I think Britten wrote his in 37, 38. And he was writing about what was looming, what was coming, what was still, it was just the end coda is not finished. And then 10 years later, it's as if Shostakovich then writes about what has happened in the last 10 years. And Britain Violin Concerto also has droplets of hope here and there. And I think as a performer, even if it's the most darkest type of music, I think our job is always to draw some little hope in all the despair. But of course, Britten, because the way he ends it, and because his final movement is the Passacaglia, and then Shostakovich comes 10 years later with the nocturne that goes into Passacaglia and then goes into this, of course, forced triumph. But there is that fake forced triumph will maybe someday be really, that his people will see this joy as a real joy again. And also in the first movement, we were talking about this D major. These moments just give, you know, it's one note, it's one harmony, small harmony change. It just goes by, but those are droplets of hope that make this concerto one of the most unique and most powerful concertos.
And it makes you feel alive as well. We've now been to 2 orchestras who I know deeply and love deeply as well. It's always nice to perform with orchestras that maybe we don't know super well. So we get to perform with the London Symphony Orchestra coming up quite soon, and that's of course going to be very exciting as well. But I guess what's exciting about it is, by chance, it's the last time we're doing the Shostakovich this season, by chance, literally. So I just think it's going to be nice to perform in London, to be able to perform this piece for a 3rd time with another really fantastic orchestra. It's a very special thing. It's not all the time that you get, as you've mentioned, to perform a piece this many times with this many different orchestras. So it's, you know, I count my lucky stars for sure.
You know, especially also doing it in Shostakovich anniversary to conclude our 4-week Shostakovich journey with LSO is such an honor, such a privilege. And I hope that what we, you know, we experimented and found somehow through the stages, through the performances, that we can sort of, come to a ending for now. And I don't know if I'm just like that, but I'm always quite sad and reflective when it is my last time. And then I know that I have at least 10 months, a year to work on that, that piece again. So I think that concert will be very meaningful to me, the LSO week, because it will be our last Shostakovich on his anniversary and for the time being. So it will be very special, I think.